Hey, the jackalope, buddy? What's with all these redcoats gathering around Philadelphia? Have you been only building redcoats this whole time? And there it is. I thought you said we had an alliance. You know, Philadelphia is not even my capital. Yeah, on account of the Civilization game series wasn't made in 1777. Also, you realize I have tanks and machine guns. Oh yeah, I'm in the atomic era. For real though, would it have killed you to build a library? On July 8th, 1777, British General William Howe loaded up some 18,000 men aboard ships in the harbor at New York City. Upon learning of it, George Washington made the rather natural assumption that Howe's army was headed up the Hudson River to lend support to the British march on Albany in northern New York. In fact, even after the ships disappeared into the Atlantic, Washington remained wary of a feint to draw him away. The ships, however, never returned back to the Hudson. Instead, they were sighted again on July 31st off the Delaware coast. The Delaware River provided a waterway to Philadelphia, the seat of the American Congress. Yet, curiously, Howe did not land his men, and once again disappeared into the Atlantic. Was he intent on taking Charleston, South Carolina then? Nobody knew.
A week later, Howe turns up in the Chesapeake Bay. Then, bang! Suddenly there's an army on the bank of the Elk River, only 55 miles from Philadelphia.
As it happened, Howe's sights were set on Philadelphia. Only he had decided not to test the American defenses along the Delaware and chose to land his men in Maryland instead. Washington wasted no time positioning his troops between Howe and Philadelphia. By September 10th, he'd strung his army out along Brandywine Creek, a wooded stream that could only be crossed at its fords. General Nathanael Greene held the center at Chad's Ford, which was also the road to Philadelphia. Alas, as in the Battle of Long Island, the Americans neglected to defend their flank. Two crossings north of their position, Trumbul's Ford and Jeffrey's Ford, remained uncovered. On September 11th, Howe made his move. As on Long Island, he sent Germans up the center to hold Washington's position. Meanwhile, his main force, led by himself and General Charles Cornwallis, crossed the two open fords to the north. By 2:30 in the afternoon, the British troops had reached Osborne's Hill on the Americans' right flank.
In spite of what Bigfoot may have told you, General George Washington was far from perfect. Evidently, he had heard of the move earlier in the morning, but he'd done nothing.
American General John Sullivan moved quickly, swinging his troops around to meet Howe and Cornwallis. And here again the battle followed a familiar script. As on Long Island, the British took their sweet time. Another hour and a half passed before they finally attacked. The Americans had left a gap in the center of their hastily formed line. The British accepted the invitation to enter, then turned against Lord Stirling's men on the American left. Nathanael Greene's men, formerly at Chad's Ford, covered 4 miles in only 3/4 of an hour, arriving just in time to prevent Stirling's line from disintegrating. All the same, by nightfall, the Americans had retreated at both Osborne's Hill and Chad's Ford.
What the British needed, however, was a decisive victory.
As it was, Washington and his men had lived to fight another day. Reinforced by soldiers from Peekskill and militia from Maryland and New Jersey, Washington spent the next 2 weeks maneuvering to block Howe's path to Philadelphia. At the Battle of the Clouds, a sudden downpour of rain prevented what otherwise might have been a full and deadly engagement. At Paoli, or as the locals call it, Paoli, the British surprised and defeated a detachment of Americans largely through the use of bayonets. The Paoli massacre, as it is sometimes known, resulted in over 270 American casualties, compared to less than a dozen for the British. Washington, now wary of being trapped, led his army 10 miles up the Schuylkill River, whereupon Howe slipped across the Schuylkill and marched into Philadelphia.
Now, in the 18th century, if you lost your capital, you were supposed to lose the war. But this wasn't any ordinary war. The Patriots just went on fighting.
The Americans still held the Delaware River, and the British were thus unable to bring in supplies or troops to Philadelphia by water. Unwilling to confine himself to the city, Howe sent 9,000 troops to Germantown, 5 miles to the north, 3,000 more to protect the supply line from Elkton, and 2 battalions to capture Billingsport, 12 miles to the south, leaving only 4 battalions in the city itself. For his part, Washington remained eager for action. Seeing his enemy thus spread out across the map, he made the bold decision to strike. Washington's plan called for 4 simultaneous attacks. At 5 a.m. on October 4th, Major John Armstrong would lead militia on the American right, while General John Sullivan would attack down the Germantown road through the middle of town. Nathanael Greene would attack on Sullivan's left, and a mile further to the east, Brigadier General William Smallwood, promoted after his heroic stand with the Maryland 400 at the Battle of Long Island, would take the Old York Road on the extreme left. And the plan might have worked, but for a heavy fog that settled over Germantown on the morning of the attack.
Could only see about 50 yards in any one direction. Of course, this caused confusion for both sides.
The British soldiers initially yielded at the sight of Sullivan's force, believing it to be the whole of the American army. For his part, Howe believed it to be only a scouting party and ordered his men to reform. As for the Americans, their inability to coordinate the 4 attacks in the fog proved crucial. At one point, in fact, Greene's right fired on Sullivan's left as it moved to secure its flank. A timely counterattack by Howe sent the Americans retreating. In the end, Smallwood's force arrived too late to fight, and Armstrong's never engaged. Yet here again the script remained familiar. The British won the battle, but failed to pursue and destroy the rebels. Meanwhile, Washington's army fought bravely and remained intact. 2 months later, the Americans would settle down for a grueling winter at a village 18 miles northwest of Philadelphia. Its name would soon become synonymous with both suffering and enduring hope: Valley Forge. Let us know your thoughts on today's episode in the comments below. Might the Americans have won the Battle of Germantown had the fog lifted? Or is that unfair to the British, seeing as the fog affected them quite as much as it did the Americans? If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more American history content. Until next time, this is Bigfoot saying so long and save me a seat at your next campfire.